Tony Blair and President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, took part in a meeting on Gaza at the White House tonight and presented Donald Trump with ideas for a post-war plan. The meeting also included...
Why is Blair still fucking up the Middle East? Stop it. Go to The Hague. You're wanted there, not in meetings about restructuring the Middle East that you helped fuck up. Twice. You had to resign the second time. Pity he didn't resign the first.
A discussion of how to increase aid into Gaza. Famine, as you know, was confirmed in Gaza City and its surrounding area for the first time last week, according to a UN-backed food security body. The last time we heard of a US plan for Gaza, it was described by Donald Trump as creating a Riviera of the Middle East and involved removing the Palestinian population. Remember this AI image that Donald Trump shared months ago. Now, there...
Oh God, I'm glad they're not playing all of it. Fucking hell, it was so embarrassing. Sickening, but also embarrassing and cringe. And awful.
There is apparently a new plan promised, but we have little information about it. The US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff described it as comprehensive. As for when it will be needed, President Trump has said the war will end within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Steve Witkoff didn't repeat that on Fox News, but he was upbeat about an end to the conflict.
It's a very comprehensive plan we're putting together on the next day that I think many people are going to be, they're going to see how robust it is and how well-meaning it is. And it reflects President Trump's humanitarian motive.
I mean, it is funny to me, like, genuinely the only person in the entire Trump administration that I don't despise with a fucking, like, burning vengeance is Steve Witkoff at this point. I feel like he is just genuinely somebody who wants peace. And it's just a guy that Trump knew as a golfing buddy, right? Isn't that he's just someone who used to play golf with Trump at Mar-a-Lago? Isn't that who Steve Witkoff is?
Ash, Tony Blair was a Middle East envoy.
Hang a minute. Hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. Why have they got Blair looking like Yahya Sinwar? Is it just me? Is it just me, chat? Is it just me? Or does this picture of Blair they're using here look just a little bit like Yahya Sinwar? Am I going mad? It does look a little bit like Yahya Sinwar.
After leaving number 10, he believes in a two-state solution. He's believed to be on good terms with the Israeli Prime Minister. How significant is the fact that Tony Blair's involved in discussions about a post-war Gaza?
Well, I guess it's because Satan was unavailable. I mean, look, Tony Blair and the Tony Blair Institute, it's never met a despot whose money they didn't want to take. All right, so they did work with, you know, the regime of Kazakhstan. They took their money, they've done all kinds of PR work for some really, really grubby individuals, and I see this as a complete continuity of it.
I mean, they've taken huge amounts of money from Saudi Arabia, you know, that very nice country that does all the nice things.
And which particular grubby individual?
Well, no, I'm talking here about the Kazakh regime in particular, and also Paul Kagame.
Right.
What I'm talking about in terms of the Tony Blair Institute's role with the Gaza Riviera plan is that they had been sitting in on those meetings, which were involving putting together the pitch deck, which is basically a way of glamorizing ethnic cleansing.
Right. So can I, on that, they said that was an FT report last month, and they said that was categorically untrue. There is a statement that the Tony Blair Institute have given the Times tonight, saying the Institute speaks to many different groups and organisations with post-war plans for Gaza, but did not endorse any move to relocate Gazans. The Tony Blair Institute's work in the region since its inception has always been dedicated to building a better Gaza for Gazans.
So at this current summit in Washington, there is no Palestinian representative.
That's true.
So this is a series of talks involving Israel and Westerners. And if you're Palestinian, there is no reason why you should trust this at all, because the history for Palestinian people has been every time that they've been removed or displaced, they've never been allowed to come back. And that's been from 1947, 1948 onwards. And the only serious discussion about what a lasting ceasefire, a lasting peace, and a lasting day one plan would look like would involve leverage. And it would involve saying, okay, Israel has to not just agree to a ceasefire, but stick to it this time, which they didn't do in March, because otherwise no more military aid, no more military support, no more reconnaissance flights, no more trade deals. We're not just going to sanction individual settlers, we're going to sanction settlement goods, and we're going to sanction Israeli goods as well. That's the only way you get.
And specifically companies involved in the West Bank settlements, right? Any company, literally any company that trades with illegal settlements in the West Bank must be boycotted by unilateral public bodies and diplomatic arrangements, right? Like the European Union should be doing things like boycotting the economic position of the illegal settlements. It's bad enough that we have Western companies profiting off of it. But the fact that these people are allowed to transport their shit back to the UK it's farcical. It's farcical that we open up Rosebank not just to any private companies, but to a private company owned by Delek Group that helps finance the West Bank settlements, illegal West Bank settlements and outposts, right? It's a moral outrage that these things were allowed to happen up to this point and have been allowed to happen continually. It shouldn't take a genocide for these people to get boycotted. But at the very least, now the genocide has happened, they should be boycotted, as should the ambassador be expelled, and everything else Ash pointed out there, like total trade embargoes and trade restrictions, sanctions, diplomatically isolating Israel. But of course, again, America doesn't want to do that, because it's not about the geopolitical interests of America. It's not even about peace or stability in the region, or the protection of the Jewish state for the Jewish people in it. It is manufacturing the future for Christian Zionism by ensuring that a nation of Israel exists so that it can fulfill the prophecy that the Christian Zionists want to come true.
Them to move.
Okay, what do you think of the Tony Blair or Tony Blair being in that meeting?
Well, the reason he's there, as you said, is his work with the quartet, and what that signalled to me is that what the Trump administration is looking for is trying to get buy-in from surrounding Arab countries to whatever settlement this is.
And Tony Blair is a link.
Precisely, that's what he did during the quartet years. What that achieved is somewhat questionable. I think Ash is right that you've got to have a Palestinian voice involved in these, and if you try and impose some kind of formal settlement, it's not going to be sustainable. It's going to breed further radicalisation. But to me, this summit is the cart before the horse on this, that we haven't got...
And the problem, of course, as well, is that even if they did get a Palestinian representative, it would just be some fucking controlled opposition from the Palestinian Authority that is just going to roll over and take whatever Israel wants anyway. There has to be a meaningful Palestinian representation at these talks. It's got to be a Marwan Barghouti. There's got to be somebody who represents the broader coalition of Palestinian groups who do want to see, at the very least, a Palestinian state on the 67 borders, and who won't just acquiesce to whatever Israel wants to be able to sit upon their millions in their very nice houses in the West Bank that they get access to for continually being the Palestinian side of the oppression of the people of Palestine at the behest of the Israeli government. That's why they want the Palestinian Authority in Gaza and in the West Bank, at least on the kind of moderate side of Zionism. It's because the PA is basically controlled by Israel. Has to be one of the actual Palestinian political parties who has the interest of Palestinians at heart and who is sincere in representing those people who's at these talks.
It was a summit.
Well, meeting, gathering, whatever you want to call it. But the fact is, there is still no ceasefire. The hostages haven't been returned. And all the images reporting we have seen from Gaza, because there's been very limited access for foreign journalists, and the Times has been a newspaper that's consistently called for more access for foreign journalists to be in there, is to say we don't know how that rebuilding process is going to look like as well. Everything we've seen is that Gaza is a complete ruin, and trying to go from what we see now to this plan it just feels realistic to me. And I mean,
it's almost like Israel were doing so much damage deliberately trying to destroy as much infrastructure as possible to make any future state, any future rebuilding of Gaza as difficult as possible to justify their own annexation. It's almost like that was the plan from the start. Any ceasefire that does happen will just get broken by Israel. Is the fundamental truth about the fact that the hostages were never the issue, is that the hostage deal to release all of them was on the table in March, and it was broken deliberately by Israel to continue the conflict, to make sure that Netanyahu's governing coalition wasn't broken by the Haredi party. Like, that was quite literally the only reason why this war is continuing, is because of Bibi's political future.
Trump Riviera thing, you've always got to remember with Donald Trump that he leans into things that are unrealistic, that are camp, that he doesn't necessarily mean that. But at the moment, the administration is not saying anything. You know, that statement from Steve Witkoff there said you'll hear about it in 2 to 3 weeks. Does anyone really think this war's going to be resolved in the next 2 to 3 weeks? I mean, I don't. It's just not realistic.
I don't think anybody does that who is credible. Do you think Keir Starmer would have had prior knowledge of Tony Blair going into the White House?
Probably. I mean, you would have thought that he's a former Prime Minister, and I think Keir Starmer and Tony Blair...
You've got Peter Mandelson out there, of course.
Precisely.
Jonathan Powell.
Exactly. I mean, there's a lot of Blairite influence on the Starmer administration and their foreign policy. I think...
Really? Really? Is there loads of Blairite influence on the Keir Starmer administration, given that it seems to be a carbon copy of the Blair administration? Well, at least the Blair administration put up the 50p rate of income tax. Precious chance of getting that from Rachel Reeves.
They would have acknowledged the Foreign Office as kind of diplomatic protocol on this. But again, I don't think he's there for the UK, is my reading of it. I don't know for certain.
Sure.
I think it's more to do with the quartet role he did in the past.
I think the Jared Kushner element here is really, really important, because something that binds Donald Trump and Jared Kushner, as well as the ties of marriage and family, is an interest in real estate. And while I think that the Gaza Riviera plan is offensive, you know, the idea that you can just displace a whole people and turn it into a holidays destination is disgusting. There is something which is consistent and already happening, which is in the United States, you do see these auctions and sell-offs of Palestinian land, what is under international law meant to be Palestinian land, to, you know, interested parties in American real estate, you know, particularly those who wish to settle, you know, as part of the project of Jewish settlement of what they consider to be Greater Israel. So this is something which is already happening in some form, predominantly in the West Bank, and now they want to apply that to Gaza. So,
and what's so frustrating, right, is that there were actual sell-offs of land. There were international crimes taking place on United States soil, where Zionist groups would literally just have this entire kind of smorgasbord of potential Palestinian land that American colonists could be able to buy, right? And they would maliciously set these things up in synagogues, so that, or Jewish cultural centers, so that when naturally people protested these international crimes, the discussion was, oh, this is anti-Semitic because you're protesting a synagogue or a Jewish cultural centre. No, they're protesting international crimes. They're being placed there cynically to be able to wave them away as being opposed only by anti-Semites rather than by people who want international law to be upheld. Just the most grotesque stuff. There was a really great series, I think by TikTokers, also put up on YouTube as well. I forget what they were called now, who infiltrated one of these Palestinian land sell-off things, and it's sick. It's genuinely sick. It's American colonialism writ large.
again, for me, this comes back to the central question of leverage, which is we know where the balance of Israeli opinion is, right? The balance of Israeli opinion is that there is majority support for expelling the people of Gaza. We know that there is majority support, you know, for you know, an annexation and
that's
resettlement
despite
of
the
the West
protests
Bank.
we've seen this week from
Right.
Israeli family hostages. You say there's
Sure.
majority
So
support.
there are protests, and while there is strong support for ending the war to bring back the hostages, there isn't strong support for allowing the Palestinians a state. That's where the political
Because, of course, Israel is a genocidal society. Every poll shows that they are uniquely genocidal in their desire to completely dehumanize the entirety of the Palestinian population, right? The reason why there are protests is because they want the hostages home. They really care about the 50 or so people, only 30, I think, of which are alive, who are still held captive in Gaza, some of whom are just prisoners of war because they were active IDF soldiers at the time that they were abducted. Yet the hundreds of thousands of Palestinians that are dying and the millions of Palestinians who would get ethnically cleansed are things that they want to see happen. The only reason they want the war to end is because of the poor Zionists that are still sitting there in Gaza, all 30 of them, right? Couldn't even fill like a classroom in a British school. And those people are far more important to the people of Israel than the hundreds of thousands of Palestinians that are dying and the millions who are set to be ethnically cleansed.
Centre of gravity is. So if you want to overcome that, create a different incentive for Netanyahu and his cabinet, there has to be some kind of punitive consequences for Israel.
True.
And I still think,
And in general, Netanyahu doesn't listen to words. He is a man without conscience. The Israeli public are people without conscience when it comes to the Palestinian issue, for example, or the Palestinian question, as someone like Smotrich might describe it, for example. They don't care at all. They only care materially. Words, strongly worded letters, do not cut the mustard when it comes to negotiating with Israel, who only understand hard power. But you have to make material, as Ash pointed out, punitive actions to be able to get Israel to change its mind, because they only care about the material. Like, you have to appeal to the conscience of your oppressor, but you cannot do that when they have no conscience.